Women, especially in the United States, have had an extreme uphill battle just to secure some basic rights and freedoms. From the right to vote all the way through bodily autonomy, it's sadly still an ongoing struggle to this very day. And that's not even the half of it. Frankly, you'd think with modern knowledge and morals, it would be a safer world for women of all ages. But it just isn't. Women are often targets of male predators who do unspeakable things to them. And more often than not, the police are unable to catch the perpetrators before multiple victims arise, if they catch the guy at all. Before we begin, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Every new sub helps us achieve our goal and keeps us motivated to create new content. With that being said, I'm your host, Amber Assault, and here are 10 must-see suspense films where women are being hunted. Number 1. Woman of the Hour. Directed by the wonderful Anna Kendrick and based on the real-life dating game killer, this film follows both Cheryl Bradshaw as she's preparing for her appearance on the dating game, as well as Rodney Alcala, the vicious, misogynistic murderer who reputedly took the lives of over 300 young women. The structure of the film bounces between his perspective as he lures, traps, and violates these women before ultimately ending their lives, to the increasingly disheartening viewpoint of Cheryl as she's basically reduced to a sexy body with a pretty face. In other words, TV eye candy. While the film does show many of the more brutal moments, it's not quite the cinematography of a David Fincher film, but has those same elements of intrigue and character studying. We get just enough of the prior interactions of the victims with their killer to learn about who they were, making it even more tragic when their lives are cut short by the hands of this absolute monster. Eventually, both narratives catch up, and we see the episode of the dating game play out, where he charms his way through the game show to ultimately win a date with Cheryl. If you're not familiar with the story, I won't spoil how it turns out, but it is definitely nail-biting. A must-watch for serial killer enthusiasts, so head over to Netflix to check this film out. Number 2. Copycat. Starring the one and only Sigourney Weaver, she plays Helen Hudson, a criminal psychologist who, after giving a guest lecture at a local university, is targeted by a deranged serial rapist, Daryl Lee Cullum, and is cornered in one of the university's bathrooms and assaulted. Thankfully, a cop intervenes and stops him before he can finish her off. But these leaves her extremely traumatized and agoraphobic, ending up living a secluded life inside a super high-tech apartment and conducting her entire life through a computer screen. Suddenly, a wave of SA murders hits San Francisco, setting the entire coast into a panic. These crimes are very similar to other major crimes from the past, copying the methods and crime scenes from notorious serial killers such as Albert DeSalvo, the Hillside Strangler, David Berkowitz, Jeffrey Dahmer, and Ted Bundy. Helen is then contacted by homicide detective M.J. Monahan and her partner Reuben Goetz to possibly use her expertise to try and help solve the crimes and put a stop to it before more victims show up. Unfortunately, this also causes the actual murderer to contact Helen as well and begin to torment her. Dealing with topics such as sexual assault, trauma, mental health, and navigating the justice system, this is a great watch for crime hounds, so be sure to sink your teeth into it over on Plex, Prime, Apple TV, or Fandango. Number 3. Kiss the Girls. With the recent release of Cross on Amazon Prime, you might be craving more of the titular character's crime-solving cases. And luckily, there are 3 films out exploring the various Patterson novels, starting with 1997's Kiss the Girls. There's a huge twist to this film, so I'll try and be as vague about any plot details as I can. But essentially, women are being abducted, housed, and repeatedly assaulted until eventually disposed of, all by a serial killer known as Casanova. However, right near the start of the film, Naomi Cross, the niece of Detective Alex Cross, is also kidnapped, so he personally puts himself on the case. And since there's a clock on it, victims are only kept for about a week before being killed and ditched. He's got to use all his skills to make sure he tracks him down and rescues the missing young women. With plenty of suspects and a twist reveal, this film will definitely be a great addition to your suspense thriller collection, so definitely head over to MGM+, Sling TV, Prime, Philo, Apple TV, or Fandango to check it out. Number 4. 1 Hour Photo. Robin Williams was such a versatile actor, he brought us the laughs, the tears, and in his later, more darker roles, he brought us fear. While not necessarily his darkest role, the character of Psy is all too eerily familiar. That awkward loner who gives you those heebie-jeebie vibes and turns stalking into an art form. Essentially, Psy is an aging, single man who's not had much luck with women, or people in general for that matter, and works at a local photo development center inside a big chain store. With the advance of digital photography, however, less and less people are dropping off photos, which leaves him a bit disgruntled, as he claims the art form of photography is being erased. One particular customer who frequents the location, though, really heats Psy's coils, and he becomes obsessed with her, imagining himself in the role of her husband and father to her children. At first, she disregards it as banter from an older man, but eventually it even begins to creep her out. And we find out exactly why she should be, as he has several duplicates of her personal photos and videos at home, including some he made himself. It has an absolutely tragic and horrifying end, which will leave you feeling uncomfortable and possibly questioning your daily interactions with strangers. But remember, it's just a movie. Highly recommended you check this one out over on Prime, Apple TV, or Fandango. Number 5. Boston Strangler. Based on the real-life serial killer, the Boston Strangler, the film is mostly told from the perspective of a few journalists and researchers working at the Boston Record-American. At the time, female journalists were just becoming recognized for their abilities, but many still dismissed their stories and questions as hysterics and inflated drama. In 1962, 3 older women were sexually assaulted and then murdered via strangulation. All 3 cases had similar circumstances, living alone, and were left with stockings tied around their necks in the shape of a bow. However, when Loretta McLaughlin writes a piece about it, the Boston police throw a fit and get the story killed. When a 4th victim turns up, Loretta joins forces with Jean Cole and do their own investigation, enduring rampant sexism, both in the workplace and by the people they are interviewing. Even Loretta's husband begins to belittle her about it, claiming she's not performing her wifely duties. But this doesn't deter her, and she coins the name, the Boston Strangler, which quickly catches on with many women in the community and sparks a public outcry. As more victims begin to pile up and the police become increasingly inept at solving the case, the film explores how essential the news media was in finally stopping the assailants and putting a stop to the crime spree. Something to note, though, the case was sort of reopened. As it wasn't actually solved, only one suspect was arrested in connection with the murders, but whether there was a secondary killer or just a bunch of copycats, the crimes continued long after his incarceration. Definitely check this film out for a unique look at the case, over on Hulu, Prime, Disney+, Apple TV, or Fandango.
Looking for some new duds to dazzle your friends and family with? Support Fat Ninja Studios by heading over to fatninja.shop and checking out our very own merch store. We've got everything from shirts, hoodies, hats, shoes, and more. Again, check out fatninja.shop. Every dollar spent goes to our big fund jar and helps us produce more quality content and short films. Thanks again.
Number 6. Zodiac. David Fincher is a mastermind at crafting taut, engaging, suspenseful thrillers. With films like Seven and shows like Mindhunter, we are transported to these gruesome and gritty worlds where serial killers and their inhumanity are put on full display, and Zodiac is no exception. I should preface this entry by saying the case was never officially solved. There were multiple suspects, but the film focuses on Arthur Lee Allen, whom San Francisco Chronicle cartoonist Robert Graysmith believed was the true Zodiac killer. The film is heavily based on the books written by Graysmith, 1986's Zodiac and 2002's Zodiac Unmasked. Between 1968 and 1969, the Zodiac murdered 5 known victims, with a suspected total of 37 victims altogether, and he did it with absolute brutality, mainly targeting couples and forcing them to watch each other die. His nickname is derived from both the strange symboled costume he wore when committing the murders, described by one of the survivors, and the letters he frequently sent to the police and the newspapers, which all but 2 were decrypted using cryptograms and ciphers. The case went inactive for years after, but was reopened in 2007 after possible new evidence was discovered and another letter was deciphered. The film itself, though, is drenched in this heavy, unrelenting sadness and intense suspense, as well as some of the most infuriating character moments that will have you shouting at the screen. But it is an absolute must-watch. So head over to Pluto TV, Prime, Apple TV, or Fandango to get immersed in one of Fincher's most engaging films. Number 7. Sleeping with the Enemy. Starring America's sweetheart, Julia Roberts, she plays Laura Burney, a young, beautiful woman living the idyllic life married to a rich, loving husband in a giant, fancy beach house. That illusion is quickly broken, however, when we see that her husband, Martin, is nothing but a misogynistic, controlling, abusive piece of shit who physically, emotionally, and sexually abuses her. She has been trapped in this hellhole for 4 years, but finally has gathered the courage to escape him with a well-thought-out plan that would leave him thinking she was dead, and she could start a new life under a new identity. While she does manage to pull this off, unfortunately, it doesn't last, as a picture in a local paper is somehow brought to the attention of her former husband, and he begins to use his vast resources to hunt her down. He moves heaven and earth to get at her and reclaim her as his property, and will even kill anyone who gets in his way. This sets the film up for a heart-pounding, climactic ending that might make you jump right out of your seat, giving the women who've experienced this all-too-real shit show a triumphant rallying point to cry out, "Yes, girl, yes." Celebrate women fighting back by checking this film out over on Prime, Apple TV, or Fandango. Number 8. Memories of Murder. A 2003 Korean crime thriller, the film sees a local South Korean detective named Park Do-man investigating the rape and murder of 2 young women outside of a small town. Never having had such an incident in his jurisdiction, he is a bit overwhelmed, so evidence is improperly collected. Certain methods of investigation are suspiciously misleading, and the forensic technology they have access to is outdated and hard to come by. Their first suspect is a mentally handicapped boy, Baek Kwang-ho, who Park's partner Cho beats intensely until he gets a confession. Enter Seo Tae-yoon, a forensic crime expert for Seoul, who is sent to take over the case as it's clearly being mishandled, and the puzzle pieces begin to fall into place. The film is definitely a slow burn, diving into the political and systematic issues within the Korean Justice Department, and how culture and folklore have a major impact on the populace there, and their willingness to work with authorities. With an even darker ending that will leave you reeling with a few questions, it's a surefire think piece that's best watched with a group of crime enthusiasts who love to solve an unsolved crime. You can watch it over on Tubi, Apple TV, or Fandango. Number 9. All Good Things. A true crime thriller based on the life and subsequent crimes of Robert Durst, son of the New York real estate mogul, Sanford Durst, chillingly portrayed by Ryan Gosling. Now, the film changes the names of the character to David Marks, but it's almost one for one of what we learned about the real crimes that Durst committed. The film begins almost like a romantic drama, giving you the Notebook vibes as you see Ryan romance a young and vivid Kirsten Dunst. But the cracks begin to show when arguments and difficulties within his family and workplace begin to manifest themselves as physical outbursts. Eventually, the two are married, and things seem to be on an upswing. But when Katie, played by Dunst, reveals she's pregnant, it absolutely infuriates David, and he insists she get an abortion. At this point, if she were to try to leave him, she would be kicked out of medical school and become homeless, as David has secured it so she wouldn't get a penny from him. She tries to fight back by gaining some leverage through hiring a financial investigator to do some digging. Suddenly, she disappears. The film then picks up 18 years later, when the case of her disappearance has been reopened. Due to a novel written by David's best friend, Deborah Lehrman, David takes it upon himself to try and silence any potential witnesses against him, shooting and killing Deborah, and then assuming the identity of an older woman while hiding out in Texas. Not quite the dark comedy that films like Fargo attained, the story is almost too absurd to be believable, until you watch the documentary about Durst and realize how much of the story is steeped in actual events. Satisfy your own curiosity by heading over to Netflix, Tubi, Prime, Sling TV, Redbox, Apple TV, or Fandango to check it out. Number 10. Maniac. While the original film hit cinema like a fever dream, the 2012 remake starring Lord of the Rings actor Elijah Wood is somehow even creepier and more disturbing and brutal. Shot entirely in the first-person perspective through the eyes of the killer, which reminds me, check out our list, 10 films from the killer's perspective, to see similar films. This film, though, gives us the slow unraveling of reality as the more he kills and gets away with it, the more he reshapes his own perception of the world around him. An employee at a mannequin restoration facility who suffers from schizophrenia and is having trouble dealing with the death of his mother, as he also has some lingering trauma from watching her have sex with Johns while she was a prostitute. This leads him to murder and scalp young women of the night and attach their hair onto his collection of mannequins, with whom he begins to have relationships with and relive one specific childhood memory, brushing his mother's hair before she went out for the night. The film is absolutely disturbing and revolting, but also captivating. Like a car crash you can't look away from. So if this is in your wheelhouse, you can see it for yourself over on Pluto TV, Plex, the CW, AMC+, Sling TV, Prime, Apple TV, or Fandango. Thanks for checking out the video. Did we leave any films off the list? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to smash that bell icon to stay up to date with our latest releases. You can reach out to us on Twitter/X, @StudiosFAT, or chat with us on Discord, linked below. If you're really enjoying our content and want to help support us, click that join button for exclusive content, rewards, and perks. Make sure to check out our very own merch store located at fatninja.shop. All proceeds go toward our next film project, so we'd greatly appreciate it. I've been your host, Amber Assault. Thanks again, and take care, my lovelies.